This is the Final Word World Cup Daily Day 3, Part 2, South Africa versus Sri Lanka with Jeff Lemon and Bharat Sundaresan for Westfield, London, more extra, less ordinary, coming to you from the city of Chennai. That's right, you didn't know that we were going to be here. We didn't know for sure that the Final Word would make it to India, but we have made it to India, and here we are. We're in Chennai, a place dear to your heart.
Very dear to my heart. This is where I went from addict to journalist, just down that road. So welcome to Chennai, Jeff Lemon.
Well, we've got to start things as we do here on the Final Word with a 30-second summary. A wicket early, Bavuma was out, but then things got a lot better from there. 204-run partnership between Rassi Vanderdussen and, well, not Aiden Markram because he came in next. I've completely blanked on who he was.
Quinton de Kock.
Quinton de Kock, of course. This is going really well for a 30-second summary. They powered things on, and then the fastest World Cup ton for Markram. South Africa made 428, and then Sri Lanka, well, they gave it a good shake, 326 by the time they were all out. Kusal Mendis did some crazy stuff off the top. Das and Shanaka at the end, but we'll come back to all of that in more detail now because I've blown through. I'm on about 43 seconds by now.
No, I think you were basically the Quinton de Kock and Rassi Vanderdussen partnership. 204, not bad, but nothing compared to what happened after that. It was a game of two halves, you're right, and not two halves in terms of two innings.
About four halves.
Yeah, true. You're right. I mean, it was a crazy game. For me, it was a representation of where one-day cricket is headed, or maybe where it is already. Like it doesn't happen always, but there are some times when you watch 150 over cricket these days, it feels like T20, less an extension of T20 cricket. And today was the perfect example. Having said that, yes, you're right. Temba Bavuma gets out early, and Quinton de Kock and Rassi Vanderdussen, we were watching it on the telly here. It didn't feel like they were doing anything extraordinary. It just felt like a dominant performance from a team against a weekend attack. Sri Lanka missing a lot of their key bowlers. But then they both get to their hundreds. That's when the show begins. The Markram madness, and then the big finish from South Africa, and just the madness of Sri Lanka.
Well, and it wasn't quite dominant early because, so Bavuma gets out, then the next four deliveries all go for four across a couple of overs. But then Madhushanka and Kasan Rajitha actually brought it back pretty well through the rest of the power play. So there were only 48 runs off the first 10 overs, including that flurry of boundaries, after a couple in the first over too that Bavuma struck. And you're thinking, okay, they pulled it back quite nicely here. They bring Dhananjaya de Silva on once the fielders are allowed out to bowl some spin, who immediately goes for 4-4-6, and suddenly they're away. And it's not like Vanderdussen and de Kock were just madly attacking everything. It just looked so easy. They were just particularly going after the spin. Valilage got targeted as well. But there was at least a boundary every over, it was at least so it seemed, and they cruised up to 200 without seeming to have any trouble at all.
And that's why this South African team is way more dangerous than a lot of people have given them credit for. We saw what they can do against Australia. And those 2 or 3 games where they really powered on, this is what they did. The top order, the first 30 to 35 overs, they're still scoring at a fair rate, but without taking any risks. But then they just opened the door for the likes of Markram and Heinrich Klaasen and David Miller and Marco Jansen, who started hitting some really big sixes. And that's exactly what happened today. So watch out, rest of the world. Yes, you can say, oh, the pitch was flat, and Sri Lanka, like I said earlier, didn't have some of the key bowlers. There's no Asalanka, for example. But this is the gear that South Africa have found in their one-day cricket, and they're going to target every team like that. So if they get that top order partnership going, whether it's Bavuma or Quinton de Kock, and Quinton de Kock, like, let's not take anything away from him. He was still scoring at a strike rate of over 120. It's just that it paled in comparison to what happened later on. And just, I'm sure we'll talk about the numbers. And most of those numbers, to just kind of put them into context, you have to go all the way back to 1996 when Sri Lanka were thrashing Kenya around in that, at that point, seemed like a very famous match, but seemed like an aberration when they made 398.
Sure. And well, what seems like an aberration is that if I'd put to you at the start of this match, or at the start of this tournament, who in this tournament is going to break Kevin O'Brien's record for the fastest World Cup ton? Who's going to get 100 in fewer than 50 deliveries? How far down the list would Aiden Markram have been? Like, he's a stroke player, and he made that half century, that 50, it was a half century of deliveries, 49 balls to bring it up. He made it as a stroke player. He started off with a couple of beautiful drives down the ground, off drive, on drive, played the pull shot well when the time came. But for the most part, yeah, he lofted some drives, but he wasn't doing anything particularly funky. He eventually played one sort of scoop switch over deep third sort of situation much later into the innings.
Yeah.
But for the most part, he was just driving it down the ground and occasionally over cover and a little bit over the leg side and looking every inch like Aiden Markram. He just happened to do so at a prodigious rate.
Yeah, for me, Aiden Markram is the perfect representation of what happens when a highly successful or highly talented test batter suddenly says, you know what, I have the skills to be successful as a batter across formats. Let me develop my wide ball skills and let's see what happens. And that's exactly what we're seeing from him. We've seen that from the likes of Shubman Gill, though, who was much younger than Markram at this stage. But that's what Markram is. You remember, go back to 2014-15 when he broke onto the scene. He had the lovely shots, very elegant batter. Then he added the power game. He put on some muscle. We've seen what he can do in T20 cricket. He was an IPL captain this year as well. And though he didn't fire consistently, whenever he did, this is what he did. He could tear bowling attacks apart, a bit like even someone like KL Rahul for that matter. And that's the role he's playing. KL Rahul in the middle order for India, Aiden Markram for South Africa. He did it in South African conditions against Australia. But that's the thing, he can hit the good ball for 4, but if it's even slightly off, he just hits it over the top, and he's got that power game now. And then alongside Heinrich Klaasen, that is such a dangerous middle order, and it just, I'm just so excited about the South African team, as you can make out.
Well, Adam and I were talking about this on the preview show. We're like, maybe they're actually really good. Like maybe they could just win this, particularly if they don't have to go past number 7 in the batting order.
Yeah.
And it all worked perfectly today. So each century maker, all 3 of them, get out just after they reach their 100, but that allows the next hitter to come in. So Klaasen makes a quick 32. David Miller doesn't come in until the 43rd over, and he still has time to make 39 not out. 3 sixes off the last over of the innings. Jansen comes in and hits one as well. And then there's this bizarre start to Sri Lanka's innings where, okay, so it's a maiden to start, and Gidi concedes 1 leg by off the first over. And then Marco Jansen bowls an absolute perler of a delivery that swings in, that classic left armour thing, rattles the pegs, and so there's a wicket from the 7th ball of the match. There's a couple of runs from that over. The follow-up delivery almost gets Kusal Mendis out, LBW as well. So at the end of 2 overs, they're 3 for 1, and as in 3 runs, 1 wicket, 2 overs, and then by the end of the power play, they've got nearly 100 on the board because Kusal Mendis just goes absolutely bonkers. Like, again, scorches a couple of nice drives along the ground first and then just starts playing these pick-up shots, stepping to the leg side and flipping them over deep backward square leg a la Surya Kumar Yadav, and just nailing them. He hit 8 sixes in his innings, but he hit 5 of them in the space of 10 balls.
As special a player as Kusal Mendis is, what we saw from him today was basically what would happen if Surya Kumar Yadav and Romesh Kaluvitarana had a baby together, and that would be Kusal Mendis. You're right. I mean, the scoop shots that he was playing against some of the biggest, baddest fast bowlers in the world, in Rabada, in Jansen, like you said, was swinging the ball. He was given out, and it was 1 for 2, and he thankfully, for Sri Lanka's sake and in a way our sake, he reviewed the decision and it was reversed. But yeah, some of those shots he played, it's just not just timing, it's about when he times his movement. And he's a class player as well. We've seen that over so many years. But just the rate at which he was scoring, while there was no scoring happening from the other end. He made 72% of the runs by the time he got out?
Well, okay, I can tell you one thing. He made, at the point where Kusal Janath Pereira scored his first run, before that point they were 1 for 54 at that stage. Mendis had scored 51 of the runs, and there were 3 extras. So there'd been 1 duck dismissed and 1 player on naught who was almost caught off that ball, who spooned that ball up in the air and then managed to scramble a single. So had he been caught, then who knows how long it would have been before anybody else scored a run. But yeah, he scored 100% of the team's runs off the bat in the 50 partnership that came up. I mean, it's hard to know what to make of. It starts off with that big sort of slashed 6 over deep backward point, but then the next over, 3 sixes off Ngidi, and then a couple more off Jansen was at the over to follow that. And he gets up to 74 off 44 deliveries thereabouts, and then gets out, and you're like, okay, well now they're going to fall in a heap. Except that didn't really happen either.
And the bizarreness of this the whole Kusal Mendis innings and the Sri Lankan innings is, or the first half of the innings is, you look at those numbers and if you're just listening to us talk about this Mendis innings, you might be mistaken that this was a flat pitch, a low bounce pitch where he was just getting into position and whacking the fast bowlers away. The fact that Marco Jansen was getting guys bowled with this booming in swingers, the fact that even Kusal Mendis got out to a delivery, the dismissal could easily have happened at the Gabba. I mean, if you didn't tell anyone where this game is being played, it hit the splice of his bat and he was caught behind. It was just sensational hitting on a pitch with a lot of bounce, and the big, tall South African fast bowlers were getting the ball to go through. I thought they used the bouncer really well. I mean, they bowled a few no balls here and there, but they were going hard at the Sri Lankans, but somehow Kusal Mendis, and just in terms of height as well, right? It's a perfect Rey Mysterio versus Great Khali contest. You know, I had to throw a wrestling reference in. There's this classic photo of the two, and this was exactly that, Mendis versus those guys.
So there are 111 off 13 overs when Kusal Mendis gets out. To a ball that bounces a little more, he flashes at it. His balance wasn't there. It was like he was caught between front foot and back foot. So flashed at it, gets a thick edge high to the wicket keeper's right, which is taken by Klaassen, and you know, that's the end of it. And then Sama Vikrama is out a few deliveries later to Gerald Coetzee, leading edge, goes away to mid-on, and then Asalanka just comes out and goes, well, it looks pretty good when Kusal Mendis did it, so I think I'll do something similar.
I just have a thing for Charith Asalanka's batting. You know, he was under 19 skipper. He's been touted to be the next leader of Sri Lankan cricket. I saw a lot of him last year in that one-day series against Australia live in Colombo. And he's an old school. There's a mixture of, again, I spoke about Surya Kumar Yadav and Romesh Kalutarana. Here, like, it's just a bit of Asanka Gurusinha, there's a bit of Arjuna Ranatunga, there's a bit of Robin Singh also somehow in that. And his power, he's got a strong base, he's got a big bottom in a good way. And he uses that, to like just create that power through the hips and hits a lot of balls over the onside. But he's a class batter. I mean, I'm disappointed that we haven't seen the best of Asalanka in all formats. But already in the last 6 months or so, he's proved that he can be as destructive as anyone else. And when Asalanka's batting, I'm always watching. He's in my top 3 batters to watch out for in the next 10 years. And he proved that today. And like you said, while he was batting, yes, Sri Lanka never looked like they were going to go all the way. The required rate was 10 and over. But it almost felt like he'd taken the scoreboard out of the equation. It was just attacking batting, and it was setting themselves up beautifully for the rest of the tournament.
Well, it was a bit of contrast as well, because as Dhananjaya De Silva was out cheaply, caught at backward point, and then Dasun Shanaka came in, the captain, who's been struggling for runs. But at this point, net run rate starts to become a factor, right? Because they're 5 down, and it's like, well, if you get bowled out in 25, 30 overs here, and you're 250 behind, then you're going to get absolutely slaughtered on net run rate. So it felt like Shanaka, maybe under instruction, was told just take it easy out there and just play sensibly and try to bat as long as you can through the innings. And Asalanka had the freedom to keep going, which he did. Gets up to 76 that he made in the end, and then when he gets out, Dasun Shanaka is able to just start lifting the tempo a bit. He eventually goes on to a half century of his own, makes 68, gets his innings up to faster than a runner ball. I mean, at the start, he had, 3 or 4 runs off his first 15 deliveries. Was really struggling to get it off the square. He hits a big bomb down the ground, strikes some nice boundaries. That felt really important just for his confidence as well, to get some runs into the captain. And then Kasan Rajita down the order starts throwing the bat around. Big hook shot for 6. Smokes a few 4s backing away over the offside, and suddenly they're well past 300.
And I thought the best call of the day was when they were bowled out. And Ian Smith says, Sri Lanka have been bowled out for 326. A comfortable victory for South Africa. If that doesn't sum up what this game was, nothing will. But you're right. I mean, I think Dasun Shanaka, coming into the World Cup, the last international game that Sri Lanka played, don't forget, they were rolled out for 50 in the Asia Cup final. The last ODI game that South Africa played at this venue, they were rolled out for 99 last year. So both teams really redeemed themselves in that sense. But you're right, there was talk of Shanaka being removed as captain as well before this World Cup. It is Sri Lankan cricket, crazy things happen at the last minute. So he needed a performance like that. He obviously was in no control of proceedings as captain on the field. Don't forget, at one point they were 3-4 over shot. That first innings went on. Not only was it the highest total ever in a World Cup,
the longest total.
Longest as well. They were 20-25 minutes long. To the extent we were kicked out of the press box, just to put it into context. But I mean, he had no control, so he needed an innings like that, even though it didn't really add much value overall, to just feel good about himself going ahead in the tournament.
Let us go now to the Final Word Hall of Fame. The Hall of Fame where we pick the most final word moments of the day. It's brought to you by Westfield, London. It's very hot and very humid on this roof in Chennai. We're sweating up a storm here, but I'm told that if you go to the Northern Hemisphere, you can rediscover the magic of the festive season as you glide around Europe's tallest Christmas tree at the ice rink at Westfield, London. Who knew they had an ice rink? I did not know that. I'm literally finding that out right now. Whether you're as comfortable on the ice as the West Coast Eagles 20 years ago, or you've never skated before, that's a reference you won't get, it's fine. It's perfect, festive, as an occasion on a day, it's a perfect festive day, day or night out. I'm really, really nailing this. Absolutely.
It's the ulta jet lag, as we say.
Yeah, that's true. I have been less than 24 hours in this country. Google Ice Rink Westfield. That's the easiest way to find it. Just pop that into Michael Google and see what he comes up with to book your tickets to glide around on the ice. Westfield, London, more extra, less ordinary. Well, I already mentioned the partnership, the fact that the first non-Kusal Mendis run off the bat was in the 7th over. The 7th over of the innings, and they still made 320 odd, was extraordinary. Well, a word for the South Africans, who just didn't go on with it. Out for 100, Quinton de Kock. Out for 108, Rassie van der Dussen. Out for 106, Aiden Markram. Didn't want it enough. Why don't you want it enough? Where's the pride in the badge? Where's the, I could carry on, but what, have you got anything, Hall of Fame?
Kasan Rajata's 6, in the end. The no-look hook shot. People talk about the no-look sixes that some of these big hitters hit. But Kasan Rajata he was facing backward point, but he somehow managed to hook a ball. And it went a long way as well. That 6 really stood out for me. Maybe the shot of the match, shot of the tournament so far. But also, I don't know what you made of that painting. Like, while all this madness was happening, there was a man in the stand at the Firozshah Kotla who made this painting, which eventually looked like there was a batter getting stumped in the end. I had no idea. I thought you would paint someone hitting a 6, because we saw a lot of 6s, and just on the numbers, most boundaries ever hit since that crazy game, Sri Lanka against Kenya, way back when at Kandy, 1996, 398. And this wasn't the first time a team made 400 in a World Cup, don't forget. But somehow this game, most number of runs ever scored in an ODI?
Most runs ever in a World Cup, 756, I reckon that would be, that were scored in the end in that game. So, if you're talking about stumpings, the Asalanka almost stumping, that's got to be one of the largest margins I've ever seen someone miss a ball by in order to nearly be stumped. From the left-arm orthodox spinner Maharaj, by the way, the ball was turning the way it was supposed to turn. It was already wide of him. He tried to hit it to leg side when it was about a foot away from him, and then it turned another foot away from him, and he almost got himself stumped there, your favourite. You mentioned Rajita and his 6. I like the bit where he sort of flat batted that 4 down the ground so hard that he did not just a complete turn, but another half turn. He did a 540, did a Tony Hawk trick, and almost dislocated his shoulder. He had to get the medical staff to come out and pop his shoulder back in, I'm pretty sure. That is how you hit a cricket ball. Spin, keep spinning, and then get the green whistle to come out and sort you out. The Gerald Coetzee celebration when he took the wicket. So, okay, fine. You get Kusal Mendis out when he's got 74 off 42 balls. Fine, Mark Jansen's a bit pumped up at that point. Like give it a bit of a ride. Good, great. A few balls later, you get the next wicket, and mate, they're 300 runs behind at this point. Gave it the big ones, Gerald Coetzee. I wasn't sure if that entirely warranted that one. And what else? Oh, the last bit, Asalanka hitting a ball down the race that crashed into an ambulance.
Oh, yeah.
That's always been my preferred definition of irony. We all know that the Alanis Morissette song doesn't actually contain any definitions of irony. None of them. They're a coincidence. They're annoying, but they're not ironic. Being hit by an ambulance, being run over by an ambulance has always been my go-to definition of irony. But he went the other way. He wasn't hit by the ambulance. He hit the ambulance.
He attacked the ambulance, didn't he? Yeah. I mean, I don't think what has happened today, has transpired today, has sunk in yet, Jeff Lemon. Not just for us, even for you guys watching. I think the more and more highlights we watch of this game, unless there are more crazy games up in store, I'm sure there are, we'll find so many more Hall of Fame moments. Maybe that's a practice we should follow over the next couple of weeks. Yes, we'll talk about what's happening on a daily basis, but we should keep going back to this game and finding more Hall of Fame moments, because there are a lot of hidden gems in there.
What would Charith Asalanka do That will be our guiding motto for the rest of this tournament. This has been The Final Word World Cup Daily, Day 3, Part 2. Jeff Lemon, Bharat Sundaresan. The show is brought to you by Westfield, London, more extra, less ordinary. Thanks to them. Thanks to you for watching. And if you want to support what we do, patreon.com/thefinalword. We'll see you tomorrow.